All right, we are out today with a new to me Rossi 454 Casull. Shoots 45 Colt, 454 Casull. I had originally despaired of getting one of these because on Gunbroker, the list price is like $1,000, but on Gunbroker they were $1,500. I put in a bid for $1,300, and this one had the little marble sight, and I figured, with the $120, $150 sight, there was no way I was going to get it, but somehow I did. And not very long before, I had picked up this Uberti 1873, just to kind of, because I sort of had a lever gun Jones kind of going on, which is obviously only good for 45 Colt. And not only that, you don't even want to shoot the higher powered, like buffalo bore 45 Colt, just because the rifle is, the action is a lot weaker. There's a little toggle system in here, which is how the system works, and at the top you can kind of see how the bolt here is exposed, and that's what's keeping all the pressure inside of the chamber. Obviously nowhere near enough on the higher power loads, which is why they moved on to the 1886 and the 1892, which is what the Rossi here is based off of. I do love the 1873. It's a fun gun to shoot. There are a couple of things with it. You do have to make sure that you have the lever all the way up, otherwise the gun won't function. So if it's here, the gun won't fire. So you have to make sure you've got that grip every time, otherwise the gun won't work. Great gun, a lot of fun. I love the looks of this thing, the classic lines. I wanted an 1873 Winchester. You get all those cowboy movies and all that kind of stuff. It's just a really fun gun to shoot. As far as practical uses, if you're going to go hunting or whatnot, especially if you're going to go hunting in bear country, the 454 is definitely the way to go. The reason I wanted the 454 was I knew that with 45 Colt, it didn't matter what kind of 45 Colt it was, the gun was going to be able to handle it without any trouble. I did pick up the 454 version. Now this rifle, the Rossi's, do have a little safety right here. I've read online, I don't know if it's accurate, that with the safety, you have a little green S and you have a little red F for safe and fire. I've read online where some people have said that the safety has migrated itself on when firing the 454 rounds. I haven't fired any 454 from this at all. I only fired a couple of 45 Colts just to try to get an idea of where the sight was hitting, and I only did that at like 10 yards. At 10 yards, I was shooting groups that were touching, which is what you would expect with a rifle. So the gun is certainly accurate. I'm back at like 25-ish yards now. God knows how accurate I'm going to be, but that's me, that's not the rifle. When you have the gun on safe, you pull the trigger, and it drops to not quite hitting the firing pin, so that does work for you. I had read that these guns do not feed 45 Colt. I have been shooting, in order to get kind of a sense of the gun, I've been shooting the Cowboy Action Magtech 250 grain. Now there have been a couple of times where it's gone to click instead of bang, but that was me short stroking the gun. And I'll leave it on safe, which is something you can do with this gun. Some people don't like that. Somebody online sells like a little plug. You can pull that out and just put a plug in there if you are offended by having the little safety. What happened was when I didn't have it fire, or got a click instead of a bang, I hadn't gotten the loading gate to pop up. And so, that little bit of a difference in the lever, let me see if I can put him back down. That little bit of difference, there's like a little final push that you have to do. Otherwise, when it closes, it's not going to close with the round in the chamber. So, you've got to make sure that you don't short stroke it. Once it pops up, it's fed every time. Now, I do have, and will be trying out, buffalo bore 45 Colt with a little wad cutter, the very flat bullet, which, definitely does not have the same look to it. And we'll see how this does. So I've got the little wad cutter there. We'll see how that does. It may or may not function. In fact, I may put in like 2 of these. And my plan is, you know, such as plans tend to be, my plan is to try, not dump all these all over the place, put these kind of in a reverse order. So the last round out of the gun is going to be a Vortex 454 at 1700 feet per second. The next to last is a Winchester 454 at 1300 feet per second. There's a Winchester 454, but it doesn't have the velocity. I'm going to guess it's a little bit under the 1300. So I'm going to pop that in. He'll be the third to last. We have an 1800 feet per second 45 Colt. This is civil defense. They make those really, really light rounds, and I mean, this thing feels like it's an empty casing because of the lightness of that round. And I'm going to put 2 rounds of buffalo bore because it is that weird shape, and we'll see what that does for us in terms of feeding. And the buffalo bore here is 45 Colt. I want to say it's moving at like 1,300 feet per second. No, 1,050. We have a Winchester 45 Colt civil defense. And these are running just under 1,000, I believe. I think it says. Yeah, 850. And then the first 2 rounds are just going to be the Magtech 45 Colt loads. So, just, you know, trying to get a sense of what the recoil looks like on these. You know, and we'll see how it goes. So we have 2 of the Cowboys, 1 of the Winchester, 2 of the buffalo bore, 1 of the civil defense, and then we get into the 3 big boys. So we'll see how it goes. And I'm not overly worried about accuracy, and I was smart enough to turn the safety off. And we'll see if the safety goes on. With the 45 or 454 Casull, I am kind of wondering how this little sight's going to work. You know, there is enough room that I'm not worried about it bashing me in the face or anything. But if I had this sight flipped down with 454, trying to find a good place for my thumb, you know, having it on top probably wouldn't be ideal. So we'll try this with a little marble sight here, and we'll see how we do. And the 45 Colt, and I hit that one a little low, the 45 Colt, you know, there's not much recoil out of that little cowboy load at all, but there also wasn't very much in the Uberti. All right, so there's the 2 Cowboys. Here is, our first problem. All right, the Winchester Supreme Elite is not wanting, there we go, it popped up. That may have been me. I may not have had it all the way down. It was being a little bit finicky, but again, you know, I've got to make sure that I'm really, you know, using a little bit of force there to make sure it pops up. So I won't blame that one on the Winchester ammo. Well, that was definitely a little warmer. I mean, you know, you heard the difference in the sound. All right, now we are into the buffalo bore. These are the little wad cutters, so they're shorter. It fed in just fine. That was suboptimal. It may have fed in just fine, but it ejected one of the live rounds. So we won't worry about that one. Because it was so short, when I made sure I was doing a nice powerful downstroke, it ejected the empty and it kicked out the live at the same time. And right now, there's nothing on the lifting gate at all, or the lifting lever. So now I have the ridiculously fast 45 Colt. I want to say this is like 80 grains or something. 78 grains. So for a 45 Colt round, this is just, I'm really at a loss as to what the purpose of this would be. It's fast though, so it should be loud. And it was quite a bit louder. Recoil-wise, not any different than the others, maybe even a little less. And so now we're getting into the big boys. These are this is the Winchester, which again, I don't believe had a speed on him at all. So I'm assuming it's a little bit less than the others. It's the Winchester Partition Gold. It's a 260 grain bullet. Well, you feel that. It's not terrible. I mean, it isn't. I certainly wouldn't want to shoot a box of them. But, you know, I was actually expecting a little bit worse. Of course, you know, we are going to step up, I believe, here in power. We are coming up to the Winchester 250 grain at 1,300 feet per second. Although it drops off precipitously, at 100 yards, it's down to about 1,000 feet per second. So it loses speed very quickly. Oh, that's interesting. Either I knocked it, and I don't think I did, or the recoil knocked the marble sight slightly back. We'll see if that happens here. That actually had less recoil than the Winchester Partition Gold. So maybe this Partition Gold, maybe I should have put it in between this and the Barnes. The Barnes is 1,700 feet per second, and it is a 250 grain. Yeah, 1,700 feet per second. So this is basically the baddest ammunition I have. The sight didn't move, so that leads me to believe that I knocked it to some degree. And I haven't had any movement at all with the safety. It's stayed firmly on fire. Well, that's not bad. That's not bad at all. That makes me kind of wonder. Let me shoot these little guys back to back. The Barnes and the Vortex. I'm going to feed in the Vortex first. I'm sorry, the Winchester Partition Gold first, and then I'm going to feed in the little Barnes Vortex. Sorry, I'm just checking the bullets and make sure I'm doing this in the order I think I'm doing it. I'm going to feed that one in next. Yeah. So, it'll be the Barnes Vortex first, and then it'll be that Winchester Partition Gold. And who knows? I mean, maybe I get home and find out the Partition Gold is got more speed to it than the Barnes. Okay, there's our Barnes. Here's our Partition Gold. Yeah, that actually has quite a bit more. Yeah, and take a look. That was my thumb, I think, hitting the sight and kind of canting it forward a little bit. So just be aware with the marble sight, as you're shooting it, there's the possibility that you may knock it. So let me try one more thing here. Let me grab another one of these Partition Golds. And let me try a different grip here. And let's see if that sight moves without my thumb possibly assisting the movement. And it did. So the recoil from the Partition Gold is sufficient to move the sight and kind of knock it off its alignment. So just be aware that that could happen depending on the ammunition that you've got if you are going to use the Barnes. If you're not going to use the Barnes, I'm sorry, the marble sight rather. If you're not going to use the marble sight, you know, then you just be using the buckhorns, or maybe you've got a scope mounted or whatever. Just be aware that marble sight under recoil, it can, you know, kind of cant forward, and that would mess up your follow-up shot. So if you had a bear charging at you and you were busy you know, looking through your sight and taking careful aim, and you fire and then you work the action, you know, that sight may have drifted forward. So then when you bring it back up, you don't really get a picture, you know, because it's out of alignment. So be aware that's a possibility with the marble sight, with the heaviest recoiling rounds. I'll put one more of the Barnes in. And the Barnes is a stout round. It really is, but it doesn't seem to. And let me put my hand over here. Right thumb. Okay, and it didn't change it. So it's just basically the harshest of the recoiling rounds can kind of move that sight. You know, as far as fit and finish goes, it's a Rossi. You know, you've got, you know, little gaps here and a little gap here, and the wood's not quite flush with the metal, and the bluing here isn't the greatest. And again, this is used, but you know, it's just not as even. I don't know if it'll show up or not. It's, in fact, there's in person, there's a little bit of a color difference between the magazine tube and the barrel. So, you know, you kind of look at that and you go, you know, is that a thing? If you are going to get one of these rifles, and I'm just double checking just to make sure that you have the magazine that screws into place. Apparently Rossi's first version of these, they did not screw in, and so there was some kind of a clip or something, and the magazine tube would basically shoot itself loose under heavy recoil. So obviously that's suboptimal, not what you want. The sighting system on this, I know that these are, there are sights, fiber optics, that are available. The previous owner seems to have used some nail polish on the front sight to make it red. You know, it does make it stand out to a degree. You know, if I was shooting more towards the sun, no, I wouldn't be able to pick the thing up at all. You know, just depending on which way you're oriented. You know, but you can change the front sight out. You can change out the buckhorn. You can mount a scope. And you know, for a brush gun kind of a thing, a scope may be a good way to go. Just make sure it'll stand up to the abuse of the heaviest 454 rounds. You know, if you get something that's, you know, an NC Star or some quality like that, I wouldn't be surprised if the whole thing just shook loose on you, just under the force of the recoil. So anyway, this is the Rossi 92 454.